For over 80 years, the archives of the Second World War have held stories that defy every law of physics and military logic. But among the classified debriefings and the forgotten testimonies of the greatest generation, one incident stands alone, a mystery so chilling that the Pentagon's official explanations have never quite managed to put it to rest. What you are about to hear was never meant to be common knowledge. Even today, in the age of advanced aviation and satellite tracking, this remains one of the most unsettling anomalies in the history of aerial warfare. Very few people alive today know the full extent of what was found on a cold Belgian airstrip in late 1944. This is the story of a ghost that refused to stay in the shadows. It was November 23, 1944. The air over Europe was thick with the smoke of 1,000 engines and the constant, rhythmic thud of anti-aircraft fire. At the Allied-occupied airfield of Kortenberg, Belgium, the ground crews were used to the sight of battered, bleeding bombers limping home. They were used to the smell of burnt oil and the sight of shredded aluminum, but they were not prepared for what appeared on the horizon that afternoon. A lone Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, the massive four-engine heavy bomber that served as the iron backbone of the Allied assault, was approaching the runway. It was low, it was slow, and most strangely it was silent on the radio. No distress signal had been sent. No flares had been fired to indicate wounded on board. The ground crew watched, hearts in their throats as the 30-ton machine aligned itself with the landing strip. It was a textbook approach, the kind of maneuver that usually requires a pilot's full concentration and two steady hands on the yoke. The massive tires touched the grass with a gentle puff of dust. The brakes hissed, and the aircraft taxied across the field, coming to a perfect stationary halt. For a few moments, the four Wright Cyclone engines continued to cough, spinning their propellers in the dim light, before finally sputtering into a dead silence. The emergency crews, axes, and fire extinguishers at the ready raced toward the aircraft. They expected to pull mangled bodies from a cockpit filled with lead. They expected to find a hero who had used his last breath to bring his brothers home. Instead, they found a nightmare. When the hatch was forced open, the first thing the soldiers noticed was the silence. It wasn't the silence of a dead crew, it was the silence of a vacuum. There was not a single drop of blood on the floorboards. There were no spent shell casings rolling in the fuselage, and as the investigators moved toward the front of the plane, their blood ran cold. The pilot's seat was empty. The co-pilot's seat was empty. The navigator, the bombardier, the gunners, all gone. 10 men had vanished into the thin, freezing air over Germany. Yet the plane they left behind had somehow navigated through enemy lines, crossed the border into Belgium, lowered its own landing gear, and landed itself with the precision of a master aviator. This should have never happened. To understand the impossibility of this event, we have to look at the mechanics of the B-17 itself. In 1944, aviation was purely mechanical. There were no microchips. There were no sophisticated flight computers. A B-17 was a beast of steel and cables that required constant human input to remain stable. If a pilot let go of the controls, the aircraft would eventually tip into a stall or a death spiral. It certainly wouldn't lower its own landing gear, a process that required a manual sequence of switches and hydraulic pressure. Yet here it was. The investigation into the aircraft, nicknamed Bad Penny, revealed even more disturbing details. On the navigator's desk, a flight map lay open, weighted down by a brass compass as if the officer had just stepped away for a moment. In the galley, a half-eaten chocolate bar and a thermos of lukewarm coffee sat undisturbed. But the most terrifying discovery was in the equipment racks. All 10 parachutes were still in their places. Every single one. In the 1940s, bailing out of a bomber at 20,000 feet without a parachute was a death sentence. It wasn't just unlikely, it was a physical impossibility. If the crew had jumped, they had jumped to their certain deaths, but why? What could be more frightening than a 2-mile fall without a parachute? Military intelligence eventually tracked the serial numbers to the 91st Bomb Group. The official report stated that the Bad Penny had been hit by intense flak over the target in Germany. One engine was seen engulfed in flames. The pilot, Captain John Crisp, had reportedly given the order to abandon ship. Other pilots in the formation confirmed seeing 10 parachutes bloom in the sky over enemy territory. The crew was eventually captured and spent the rest of the war in a POW camp. When they were interrogated after the liberation, their stories were consistent. They saw their plane in a terminal dive, on fire, and they jumped. But this is where the official narrative begins to crumble. If they saw the plane diving and burning, how did the fire go out? How did the plane stabilize itself? And if they were the ones who jumped with those parachutes, whose parachutes were found inside the Bad Penny when it landed in Belgium? The military's final conclusion was a rare combination of aerodynamic trim and mechanical vibration. They claimed that a piece of flak must have hit the landing gear switch at just the right millisecond to drop the wheels. It is an explanation that satisfies no one who has ever flown a heavy bomber. There are those who believe that the B-17, after thousands of hours of combat, had developed something resembling a soul, a ghost in the machine. Many veterans of the air war spoke of aircraft that seemed to have a will of their own, machines that refused to die until their boys were safe. Was it possible that the collective will of 10 men, desperate to survive, left a residual energy in the controls? Or was it something even more profound? Some alternative theories suggest that the crew never jumped at all, that they were taken mid-flight, and the parachutes found in the racks were theirs, left behind in a moment that transcended our understanding of time and space. The climax of the mystery came years later, when the Bad Penny was being dismantled for scrap. The mechanics reported that the aircraft's electrical system would often surge without a battery connected. Lights in the cockpit would flicker during the graveyard shift. It was as if the plane was still waiting for its crew to return from a mission that never truly ended. Even today, we are forced to ask, was the Phantom Fortress a miracle of engineering or a glitch in the fabric of reality? Was it a series of 1 in a billion coincidences or a message from a realm we aren't meant to understand? What do you think really happened on that November afternoon? Was this a fluke of physics, or was someone or something still at the controls? The archives may be closed, but the sky still holds its secrets.